Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be all about my recommendations if you're looking for a good read this summer. Welcome to this video. Thank you for being here. I am going to be telling you about 10 books that I would recommend you read over the summertime if you haven't read these yet. Most of these are older releases. They're not like the newest of the new, but these are the kind of books that I like to reach for when it's the summertime. I've done a version of this for like the springtime and the wintertime already for this year as well. So I'll leave those linked down below if you want to see some other recommendations that I have for a given season. Because with makeup, I don't feel that strongly about sticking to a particular season, but with reading, I tend to do that a little bit more. So let me talk you through it. Category number one are the quick, easy reads. I think for a lot of people, the quick, easy reads tend to be things like romance novels or, something cute, something that they just, don't have to think too much about. For me, it's fantasy, but with a realistic aspect to it. So more like urban fantasy or fantasy that's steeped in a bit of historical fiction as well. And I have a couple of series here that I would recommend that you can get stuck into. So the Jim Butcher Dresden Files series is actually one that I read one of these every summer, so I know this is a summer read for me. This is the first one in the series, Stormfront. It's one of the longest running fantasy series on the planet, so I think once you get stuck in, there are about 20 books that you can read, so it can keep you going for 20 years if you'd like to. These are really quick, fast-paced books that read more like a movie script than an actual story. I have heard, however, that these stories become a little bit more well-developed as time goes on. I think I've read 3 or 4 from the series, and I definitely want to pick it up again this summer. I can usually read these in a day or two because they're pretty short as well. They're about 300 pages, and they're just really quick, fun reads. If you don't know what the story is about, we meet a wizard called Harry Dresden. He works as a PI that you can hire for all of your magical services in the city of Chicago. So he has a skeleton named Bob that is sort of like his personal computer and his personal assistant as well, who he can converse with. And he is trying to navigate the political landscape of not only the human world, but also the magic world. So the last one I read, I think, was Summer Night. And that one definitely seems to be picking up more so of the political landscape and all of the different magical characters that you can encounter. But yeah, this series has been very much critiqued for a lot of trigger warnings and it not being very kind to its female characters especially. But, it's an older series that's been going on for a while. And, sometimes things just don't have to be that deep, I feel. And I'm like, if you just want something that's really action-packed, fast-paced, and fun, the dialogue can be a little bit cringy, I'm not gonna lie, but I find that is the case with romance novels all the time. So this is my kind of romance novel, you could say. So the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, I like this. In a similar vein, I've read these mainly over Christmas breaks, I think, because that's when they come out. The Genevieve Cogman, The Invisible Library, seems to have a new book out every December. I'm desperately behind with this one. I think I still need to read 2 of them to catch up. But these are, again, not too big, quick, easy reads. It's entertaining, it's quite funny, and it definitely uses a lot of tropes from existing stories a lot. We get a Sherlock Holmes-like character in here. We get clashes between dragons and fae. There's a bit of politics involved, but not too much. To me, this I would dub as a cozy fantasy read. That's what this would be for me. So again, great if you don't want something that's super high stakes. There aren't a lot of battles here. It's more so puzzles and scheming that's going on in here rather than actual clashing and people getting killed. There are very few dead bodies in these books, which can be enjoyable as well. And in this series, we meet Irene, and she is a librarian who works for the Invisible Library, and the task of the Invisible Library is to navigate the balance between worlds, from them slipping into too much chaos or into too much order. The order is represented by the dragons, the chaos by the fae, And they delve into different universes where they steal stories to put into the invisible library to restore and maintain that order. And then she gets caught up into all of the scheming of the Fae, and there are a couple of characters that you will just fall in love with and that you love. There's a bit of a romance plot in here in some of the stories, but it's not too heavy and not laid on too thickly. It's definitely more so about the cases and like trying to find the books that she needs to steal, and then she gets wrapped up in these worlds that she gets caught up in. In the first book, the alternate universe we are in is a version of Victorian London that does have some steampunk elements. We get a very carnivalesque style 16th century Venice in one of them. I believe there's one set in like a crime, a 1920s like mobster overrun Chicago. There's so many different worlds, and they're all like amplified to really play into certain things from the era. So it's a really fun read, very creative, whimsical as well in some points. We meet some werewolves along the way as well. There's a lot going on in this, and it's just a really fun read. And the last book series that I would categorize as like quick, easy reads, Strings of Murder by Oscar de Muriel, the Frey and McGray series. I've recommended this a lot. This is a little bit darker, so this could also go into like fall book recommendations perhaps, but I do really like these because it's a lot of banter and it's a lot of humor. If you like your English humor, you're gonna like this, I think. This is set in Edinburgh in the 19th century, and we meet a character, Frey, who needs to travel to Edinburgh because he has become a pariah in his social circle, and he joins the police force there and is joined up with McGray, who is running a very special division in all the weird things out of the basement of the police office. And McGray believes in the paranormal and all the weird things, whereas Frey is the one who sort of doubts all of these things. And in these stories, we always get a really fun solution that digs into a Victorian scientific discovery of the time, and that is usually how the case is solved. So it's detective, it's two characters that have like Sherlock Holmes, Watson kind of banter. We have someone who just behaves like a maniac sometimes. So it's a really nice clash of characters, and the actual cases are a lot of fun too. These are a little bit thicker, they're a bit bigger to get stuck into, but still really fast-paced, and I still need to read one of these. This next book actually represents an entire category by itself, and that is Far From the Madding Crowd by Thomas Hardy. If there is a time to get stuck into a classic, to me, that would be the summertime. It's usually when I have a little bit more time on my hands and where I don't mind picking up something that requires perhaps a bit more brain space. So that's why a classic is something that I think you can very much get stuck into. I think Jane Eyre is a great place to start if you've never read any classics before. But I read this actually over the summertime, which is why I'm holding this up. This was definitely a summertime read for me, and I liked it so much more than I had anticipated. So in Far From the Madding Crowd, we meet a woman, I always forget her name, and there are three suitors that are sort of circling around her, and she's a pretty headstrong woman, especially for the day, and she's running her own farm after her father died, which, you know, society wants her to marry, and she's very hung up on who should I marry? Should I marry for love? Should I marry someone because they're a great match? So that's definitely in here. It does, at some points, read a bit like a romance, like a traditional romance novel almost. So if you're looking for that romance, almost like, it's not even a love triangle because we have three suitors in this one. But there's like three men circling her, and we get all of her interactions with these characters. So this can be another nice one if you want to get into a bit of romance reading, but without it being too romancy and without it being like, I don't know, I don't love modern romance stories. But yeah, this is also, again, quite short. It's quite an easy read. The dialogue is pretty beautifully written as well, I find. So this was definitely a really good read for the summertime. Something not as dense as I had expected, because classics can be dense, but this wasn't. And in a similar vein, the next category is going to be bricks of books. If you want to get stuck into a tome, I would say make it the summertime. There's just something about, you know, having much more daylight in your day that allows you to read a lot more. At least I am. I'm pretty sensitive to the fact that we have a lot more daylight around. My brain is just on for longer, so I need to unwind in different ways, and that's where reading comes in. And I think that reading bigger books is a great way to get stuck into. Over the summertime, I just managed to read so many more books that are 500 plus pages. And I think that's, you know, that's just a fact. A book that's been on my to-read list for a while and that I still at some point want to get into, but I've heard so many people that they struggle. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. I may want to read her Piranesi book first. Same author, other book, that I've heard really good things about as well, and that's teeny tiny. But this, I don't know why. It's historical fiction. This still very much intrigues me, but it's so scary because the print is so small, and it's already over 1,000 pages. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to do it. Maybe this is something I need to hang on to until I retire. I don't know, when I have a bit more time on my hands, perhaps. But yeah, these are the kinds of books that I do think are good to read. If you do, like, if you go on a summer vacation, people always complain, like, I need to take so many books. You can also just take one bigger book. Problem solved. One that I think I might want to, I'm not sure yet, but something that I'm considering I might want to pick up this year in the summertime is this, The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is another really chunky one. I think it's over 800 pages. Yeah, just over 800 pages, but again, the print is super tiny. I have the second book that's sort of like a spin-off from this because this is supposed to be a standalone. I know that. It's apparently dragons, which I tend to love that too. And this has gotten so much hype, and I still haven't read it because it's just a little bit too big. But for the summertime, this may be a good one. So I think that this is one of the fantasy books I would like to get to, like at the end of August or something, like as I'm like heading back into work. This may be a good read to pick up. And then the final category, getting stuck into a series. If there's ever been a time where I've finished an entire series under like a week, it's been during my summer vacation. And one such series that I did that with, the MACQueen Quartet by Victoria Aveyard. I'm not sure anymore if I read all of these in one sitting, or I know I remember reading the last book in this series during one of the hottest days of the year that year. And that's when I finished it. So that's why this is like ingrained in my brain as being a great summer read. But I do believe I read the other books shortly before that. If you don't know what this book series is about, MACQueen is a 4-book series about a dystopian world where we have people with red blood and silver blood, and the silver-blooded people have magical powers, which is why they are in power. They are the establishment, and all the people with the red blood serve the people with the silver blood. And they are just sick and tired of having to fight all of the battles for the silver people, and they want to change things around. And then something happens which leads everybody to discover that red people also have some powers, but very different ones. There's this whole uprising. It gives Hunger Games, Divergent. It's definitely that sort of vibe. It's more of a YA thing. We have star-crossed lovers. We have a love triangle in here. There's so much in it. And a lot of people, when these were out, didn't like it because they felt it was too tropey. However, this is one of the first times I had read a YA fantasy dystopian kind of trilogy. I hadn't read all of the very popular things, just Divergent and Hunger Games, but nothing else. So to me, I was going into this a little bit fresher, I think, than most people at the time, and I really enjoyed the series, especially the last book. Yeah, I think books 1 and 4 were my favorite. In the third book, there's not a lot going on. That's one you sort of need to get through, but books 1, 2, and 4 I thought were great, and it was a YA fantasy series that didn't try to wrap everything very nicely with a bow around it and everybody lives happily ever after. I felt there was still some morally gray characters in this even after the entire thing had played out, which I thought was a very strong point of the book, actually. It wasn't too neat, and that's why I liked it. It's got its shortcomings for sure, but if you're just, again, looking for something very quick and easy, and these books, because they are YA, you could definitely read all 4 of them under a week if you have a week off. Now, this recommendation is a bit of a Marmite one, even for me, but a book series that I've always read in the summertime are all of the Cassandra Clare Shadowhunter things. I started reading the first one, so the Mortal Instruments, in like the spring-summer season of 2014, and I've kept up with the series ever since. Now, if you want to get into this and you've never read any of it, there's a lot of books out right now. This is the last one. This is Chain of Thorns in the Last Hours trilogy. I've decided that this is going to be the last Shadowhunter book I'm going to read. I do have to say, though, I went into this quite blindly because when I had finished it, because I just finished this one, I remembered that I perhaps haven't read the second book in this series. I'm like, I think I may actually forgotten to read the second one because they were alluding to some things that were happening, but it was such a long time since I read any of it. And that just goes to show how easy these are to digest. You don't need the full story to get to it. If you want to read just one series, then I think the Infernal Devices is my favorite trilogy in the entire Shadowhunters world. And some of the characters from that Infernal Devices series are the adults in this story, so we still get to see them. But yeah, I think there's like, 20 books in this series now? So if you want to read it all, then that can be a bit challenging, I think. But yeah, these have also become bigger and bigger over time. Just know when you go into these, yes, they are YA. Yes, it's a lot of romance, but there's just also something very enjoyable about it. The way it's written, like every section is a cliffhanger. It does have a multiple POV writing style, which I don't love because there are sections in the book where we get the same sort of lead up to a certain moment in the story from like 4 different characters' perspectives. And if this were edited better, it could have been so much better. Kill Your Darlings is something that Cassandra Clare just doesn't know how to do, and she puts in a lot of things that just don't have to be there. This is another one of those YA series that tries to be clever by quoting foreign languages that the author doesn't speak and referring to other works of literature to try and give this a bit more cadence, but it doesn't help it at all. If you're just, the way I go into these, because I've definitely hate read some of the Shadowhunters books in the past where I'm like, I'm just trying to keep up with the series, and I didn't really enjoy it. This one I did quite enjoy, but that's because I've sort of like let go of the frustration and I just read it as, you know, something that's very easy on the brain and it doesn't require that much effort. I ended up reading most of this in one sitting. So it is very entertaining for sure, but you need to let go of like trying to find all of the flaws that are in it because there are just way too many. Let go of that and you'll fall in love with the characters for sure, because that's how these books work. The characters are just very endearing very often, and they are just, you just want to fall in love with them. And if that's what you're looking for, then try some Shadowhunters. And then 2 series I will be reading personally. One I'm continuing and one I hope to start in August. The Red Sister trilogy by Mark Lawrence. I just finished the first book in June and I want to continue reading Grey Sister and Holy Sister in the rest of the year so I can finish it. So I think I'm going to be reading Grey Sister next. I'm currently in the midst of a bit of litfic at the moment because I always need a palate cleanser because I read 2 fantasy stories back to back. My brain cannot handle any more fantasy. I need something else. So I've switched things up and I've already read one book that is not fantasy and then another book that I still need to start it, but I think I can read it this weekend. I'm filming this a few days in advance. But then I'm going to be reading another book that's more of a litfic, and then I can go back into fantasy. So that's definitely going to happen with Holy Sister for sure. And in case you don't know what this book is about, it's about assassin nuns. We meet a character called Nona. We meet her as she's in a cart because she's been sold by her mother. And she is a child and she doesn't really know much about who she is or why these things are happening to her. She just feels a really big sense of injustice, and as she is sold on, she ends up getting into this convent of assassin nuns, and there she finds out that she does actually have some specialty about her, which is why her mother sold her, because she was so special that her mother was afraid that if she stayed in the village, she would become very easy prey for some of their enemies. So this is a great story. It was not what I had expected, for sure. So I want to keep reading this, and I hope the other 2 books are as good. And then a fantasy series that's been on the to-read list for a while is Jade City by Fonda Lee. Again, a book series I've heard so many things about. I can't wait to get stuck into this. It's apparently like feuding families, gangster, underworld. The commodity in this world is jade. So I hope I can pick this up in like August time when I've made some more headway into the Red Sister trilogy. And then I can start a new series for sure before completely finish that one. So yeah, this I think is going to be the book I take with me when I travel to London in August. That's the plan. So those are all of the bookish recommendations I wanted to share with you for the summertime. I really hoped you enjoyed it. Let me know in a comment down below what you hope to be reading this summer. Maybe you are more of a romance novel person. That's of course absolutely fine. There's still some romance hidden in these. So maybe there is a bit of a theme for me with a bit of a romance element, but it's definitely not the main thing I'm looking for when it comes to a plot or a book to read. So yeah, thank you so very much for joining me today. Thumbs up this video if you liked it. I'll be back with a new video next week. And I'm not sure yet what we're going to be talking about, but you'll see, as I will see. So thumbs up this video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more by me. I come in here once a week, so if you'd like to stay tuned for more, and then I hope to see you in my next one. See you next week. Bye!